That junk heap ruins the corporate image. Trevor laughed, pointing at my faded 1989 Honda Civic as a group of vice presidents snickered behind him. Park on the street tomorrow. We have clients visiting, and that eyesore doesn't belong in our lot. My chest tightened as everyone stared. 28 executives in designer suits watched me shrink into myself, their expensive watches glinting in the afternoon sun. I'd worked at Keystone Communications for 7 years, climbing from entry-level engineer to senior product developer through relentless hard work. Yet here was Trevor, my manager of just 8 months, humiliating me in front of leadership. "It's reliable transportation," I managed to say, my voice embarrassingly small. "It's trash," Trevor countered, his perfect teeth flashing. "Either upgrade or hide it. This is a premium technology firm, Olivia, not a junkyard." I nodded and walked away, keys digging into my palm as I fought back tears. That car had been my grandfather's final gift before cancer took him. We'd spent weekends restoring it together during my college years. The engine purred like new, despite its weathered exterior. I could afford something newer. I just chose not to. Before I continue, thank you for listening to my story. Drop a comment letting me know where you're from. I'm always amazed how these stories connect people from everywhere. My name is Olivia Preston. At 35, I had built a reputation as one of the most innovative minds in wireless communications. My patents generated millions in revenue, yet I lived simply in a modest 2-bedroom house. My colleagues drove luxury cars to showcase their success. I drove memories. That night, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing my financial portfolio. Few people knew I lived well below my means, investing 70% of my income since my first job. While others spent on status symbols, I built wealth silently. My passive income now exceeded my substantial salary, but I kept working because I loved creating solutions. My phone buzzed with a text from Nayla, my best friend since engineering school. "You okay?" "Hear about what happened in the parking lot. Trevor's a monster." News traveled fast. I sighed and replied, "Fine, just tired of his games." "Want me to poison his coffee?" she joked. I smiled despite myself. Nayla had always been my fiercest defender. We'd started at Keystone together, but she'd left 2 years ago to launch her own consulting firm. "Not worth the jail time," I texted back. My thoughts drifted to 8 months ago when Trevor joined our division after the retirement of my previous manager, Eleanor. Eleanor had been tough, but fair, recognizing talent regardless of appearance. Under her leadership, I'd flourished, earning her trust to lead our most promising projects. Trevor was different. From day one, he'd reshuffled assignments, giving my projects to his former colleagues who joined from his previous company. I was sidelined despite my track record, watching as my innovations were handed to others who lacked the technical understanding to execute them properly. "We need fresh perspectives," Trevor had explained during our first one-on-one meeting, his condescending tone making it clear he considered me outdated. I'd swallowed my pride and continued working diligently, hoping results would speak for themselves. They did not. Each quarterly review brought vague criticism about my cultural fit and executive presence, thinly veiled references to my unfashionable clothes and quiet demeanor. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Nayla again. "Enough texting," she said when I answered. "Talk to me." I pressed the phone against my ear. "There's nothing to say. Trevor's been trying to push me out since he arrived. Then why stay?" I glanced at my living room wall, where framed patents hung beside photos of my engineering team celebrating project launches. "Because I'm not finished there," I answered. "Finished what? Getting mistreated?" "Olivia, you're brilliant. Any company would be lucky to have you." I walked to my window, looking at my faithful Honda parked in the driveway. "It's not that simple. I've invested years in our current projects. If I leave now, Trevor wins. Everything I've built gets dismantled or worse, claimed by someone else." Nayla sighed. "So what's your plan? Endure more humiliation?" That question lingered as we ended the call. What was my plan? For months, I'd hoped Trevor's behavior would improve or that higher management would notice. Neither had happened. I opened my laptop and logged into my investment accounts. Numbers filled the screen. Stock portfolios, real estate holdings, angel investments in promising startups. Years of disciplined saving and smart investing had built something substantial. An email notification appeared, a quarterly report from Brunswick Venture Partners, where I'd been an angel investor for 5 years. I'd put $200,000 into their fund when Keystone gave me a bonus for a patent that transformed satellite communications. I opened the report and froze. One of the startups I'd backed had been acquired for an astonishing sum. My stake was now worth $4.7 million. My phone buzzed again. Nayla sending a job listing at a competitor. They're desperate for someone with your expertise, her message read. I didn't respond, my mind racing with a different possibility. I opened a browser and searched for Keystone Communications stock performance. The company had struggled recently, with shares down 28% over 6 months, following delayed product launches and increasing competition. Most of those delayed launches were my projects that Trevor had reassigned. I searched further, reading financial news about Keystone. Analyst predictions were grim. The board was reportedly pressuring CEO Damian Brooks to make significant changes or consider stepping down. I reached for my phone and called Nayla back. Remember Marcus Adeyemi from grad school? I asked when she answered. Investment banker guy? Sure. Didn't he try to ask you out like 17 times? We've kept in touch. He's a partner at Windsor Financial now. Okay, why are we talking about Marcus at 11 p.m.? I took a deep breath because I need someone who understands corporate acquisitions. Silence filled the line. Olivia, Nayla finally said, what are you thinking? What if instead of finding a new job, I bought the company? Another long pause. Have you lost your mind? Keystone is worth hundreds of millions. Their stock has tanked. Market cap is down to $142 million and falling. The board is getting desperate. And you have $142 million sitting around? No, I admitted. But I have nearly $5 million from a startup exit, strong relationships with venture capitalists, and intimate knowledge of Keystone's weaknesses and untapped potential. This is insane, Nayla whispered. You want to buy a public company because your boss made fun of your car? When she put it that way, it did sound ridiculous. But it wasn't just about today's humiliation. It was about 7 years of innovations that deserved better leadership. It was about talented engineers being overlooked because they didn't match some artificial image of success. Keystone is undervalued because of poor management, I said firmly. The technology that I've developed, could transform the industry with the right leadership. And you think you're that leader? Olivia, you hate public speaking. You hide during company parties. She was right. I preferred solving problems to managing people, but maybe I didn't need to be CEO. I just needed to own enough to change things. I don't need to run it. I just need to fix it. The line went quiet again. I could almost hear Nayla thinking. Meet me for breakfast, she finally said. 6 a.m. at Sunlight Diner. If you're still considering this crazy idea after sleep, we'll talk strategy. I hung up and returned to my computer, researching hostile takeovers and activist investor strategies until 2 a.m. The more I read, the more I believed it might be possible. Difficult, nearly impossible even, but not entirely out of reach. The next morning, bleary-eyed but determined, I parked my Honda on the street a block from Keystone's gleaming headquarters. As instructed, I'd removed it from the company lot. Walking toward the building, I noticed Trevor's black BMW in his reserved spot near the entrance, the same spot where my humble Honda had been deemed an embarrassment. I straightened my shoulders and walked into the building, nodding at security. Instead of heading to my usual floor, I pressed the button for the executive level. I'd never visited uninvited, but today was different. The receptionist looked up, surprised to see someone without an appointment. I need to see Damian Brooks, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Do you have an appointment with the CEO? No, but he'll want to hear what I have to say. She frowned. Mr. Brooks is in meetings all morning. Perhaps you could email his assistant to schedule something later this week. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Who are you calling? She asked, concerned. Windsor Financial, I replied as the line connected. Hello, Marcus? It's Olivia Preston. Remember that conversation about undervalued tech companies we had last month? I'm ready to move forward, but I need to speak with Damian Brooks first. I'm in his reception area, being told he's unavailable. The receptionist's eyes widened as I mentioned Windsor Financial, one of the most prestigious investment banks in the country. Yes, I understand the timing is sensitive given the current stock situation, I continued. Perhaps I should just proceed directly with the board instead. I handed my phone to the increasingly nervous receptionist. Marcus Adeyemi from Windsor would like to speak with you. The receptionist spoke briefly with Marcus, her expression shifting from skepticism to alarm. After hanging up, she immediately picked up her desk phone. Mr. Brooks, I apologize for the interruption, but there's an Olivia Preston here with investment matters regarding Windsor Financial. She listened for a moment. Yes, sir. Right away. She looked up at me with newfound respect. He'll see you now. The CEO's office door opened 30 seconds later. Damian Brooks, a tall man in his 50s, with silver-flecked hair, gestured me inside. I'd only spoken to him twice in 7 years, both times at company events, where he barely remembered my name, despite my patents generating millions for Keystone. Miss Preston, he said, closing the door behind us. This is unexpected. You work in engineering, correct? Senior product developer, I confirmed, taking the seat he offered across from his desk. I lead the quantum frequency modulation team. His brow furrowed slightly. Trevor Blackstone's division. I nodded. For the past 8 months. And now you're speaking with Windsor Financial about exactly what? I met his gaze directly. About Keystone's future. Your stock has dropped 28% in 2 quarters. Your most innovative projects are behind schedule. Your best engineers are updating their resumes. His expression hardened. These are temporary setbacks. We've weathered downturns before. Not like this one, I replied, sliding a folder across his desk. These are the original timelines for 5 key projects compared to current projected completion dates. The delays average 8 months, coinciding precisely with leadership changes in the R&D division. He opened the folder, scanning the contents. How did you access this data? I created these projects, Mr. Brooks, before they were reassigned. Recognition flickered in his eyes. The satellite encryption protocol, that was yours, along with the adaptive mesh network and quantum frequency modulator. Yes. He leaned back, studying me with new interest. What exactly are you proposing, Miss Preston? A solution. Keystone has extraordinary potential, being squandered by leadership more concerned with image than innovation. And Windsor Financial's involvement? I took a deep breath. They're prepared to help facilitate a change in ownership and management structure. Several investors believe Keystone is significantly undervalued. His face darkened. You're talking about a hostile takeover. I prefer strategic restructuring, I replied. The board might see it as a welcome solution, given current performance. Brooks stood abruptly, walking to his window. Why come to me first? If you're planning to go around management, why warn me? Because unlike some leaders here, I believe in direct communication. And because you built something valuable, that's worth saving. He turned back toward me. Who's behind this? Archer Technologies? Meritron? Private investors who recognize Keystone's potential. I stood to leave. You have 48 hours to consider your position before we approach the board directly. I suggest you review those project delays carefully. As I reached for the door, he called after me. Why are you doing this, Preston? What's your stake? I paused. I care about what we build here. Not everyone values the same things. Walking back through the executive floor, I felt strangely calm. Years of being overlooked had taught me to hide my emotions, to speak with precision rather than passion. People underestimated quiet women who drove old cars. I took the elevator down to my floor, where my team was gathered for morning stand-up. They looked surprised to see me arrive late, something I never did. Sorry for the delay, I said, joining the circle. Had an unexpected meeting. Trevor stood at the center, electronic whiteboard behind him, displaying our quarterly targets. Targets we were missing because of his reshuffling. Nice of you to join us, Olivia, he said, his tone making it clear he found nothing nice about it. We were just reviewing why the QFM project is 6 weeks behind schedule. The QFM, Quantum Frequency Modulator, had been my project from conception, until Trevor reassigned it to his former colleague Julian 3 months ago. It's behind because you gave it to someone who doesn't understand quantum field theory, I thought but didn't say. Instead, I nodded politely. Julian was explaining the technical challenges. Trevor continued, gesturing to a lanky man who looked uncomfortable. We're having trouble with signal degradation at the transceiver boundary, Julian explained, using unnecessarily complex language for a simple problem. I bit my tongue. The solution was obvious to anyone with proper background in the field. I'd solved similar issues in previous projects. Olivia, Trevor said, his tone falsely sweet. Since you're so experienced, perhaps you have suggestions? 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Trevor was setting me up. If I solved the problem, he'd take credit. If I failed, he'd use it as evidence I was no longer valuable. I'd need to review the current specifications, I said carefully. Of course you would, Trevor smirked. Well, while Olivia catches up, let's move on to… My phone rang loudly, interrupting him. I fumbled to silence it, but froze when I saw the caller ID, Damian Brooks. I need to take this, I said, stepping away from the group. Trevor's face flushed with anger. We're in a meeting, Olivia. Whatever solicitor is calling can wait. I answered anyway. This is Olivia. My office. Now. Brooks hung up. I turned back to the team. I have to go. CEO's request. Trevor's smug expression faltered. What does Brooks want with you? Guess I'll find out, I replied, walking away as whispers erupted behind me. Back in the elevator, heading to the executive floor, my composed facade cracked. My hands trembled slightly. I'd set something in motion that couldn't be easily stopped. Brooks was waiting when I arrived, along with a woman I recognized as Patricia Lynn, Keystone's chief legal counsel. Sit down, Preston, Brooks said, his earlier politeness gone. I've had a fascinating conversation with Windsor Financial. My stomach tightened. Had Marcus revealed too much? They were quite surprised when I called, he continued, especially since they have no active dealings regarding Keystone Communications. Patricia Lynn watched me with calculated interest. Mr. Adeyemi specifically mentioned you never approached them about acquiring Keystone. He seemed concerned about potential securities fraud. I kept my expression neutral, despite my racing heart. I never claimed to have a formal agreement with Windsor. I said they were prepared to help facilitate discussions with interested investors. Semantics, Brooks snapped. You implied representation that doesn't exist. Actually, I countered. I implied possibility. There's a difference. Lynn raised an eyebrow. You're playing a dangerous game, Miss Preston. I'm addressing a dangerous situation, I replied. Keystone is hemorrhaging value because of mismanagement. The quantum frequency modulator alone could revolutionize secure communications, but it's months behind schedule because it was reassigned from someone with expertise to someone without it. Brooks leaned forward. You're talking about Trevor Blackstone's decisions. I'm talking about patterns that are destroying shareholder value. Lynn exchanged glances with Brooks. What exactly do you want, Miss Preston? It was the opening I needed. 2 things. First, a complete review of project reassignments over the past 9 months with performance metrics before and after. Second, a meeting with the board to present findings on how these decisions have impacted Keystone's market position. You expect us to authorize an internal investigation because you're unhappy with your manager? Lynn asked incredulously. No, I replied calmly. I expect you to investigate because your stock has dropped 28% since these changes began. Because 3 senior engineers have quit in 6 months. Because Archer Technologies will launch their competing product before we finish ours. Despite our 2-year head start. Silence filled the room. Brooks stared at his desk, while Lynn studied me with new interest. And if we refuse? Brooks finally asked. I stood, smoothing my simple blazer. Then my breakfast meeting tomorrow with Nayla Chen, who now consults for your 3 largest institutional shareholders, becomes much more interesting. Lynn's eyes widened slightly at Nayla's name. Everyone in the industry knew her reputation for turning around struggling tech companies, often starting with leadership changes. You're not as quiet as people think, are you, Preston? Brooks said, almost admiringly. No, I agreed. I just save my voice for things that matter. Back at my desk, I tried to focus on work while my mind raced. I'd bluffed my way through that meeting with far more confidence than I felt. Nayla did consult for one of Keystone's shareholders, but not all 3. And while she had agreed to help me, we were still formulating a plan. My computer dinged with a meeting invitation. Project Review Task Force, scheduled for 8 a.m. tomorrow, with Brooks, Lynn, and the CFO. Subject line, confidential, resource allocation analysis. They were taking me seriously. At 5:30, while most of the office was still working, I packed up my things. Trevor appeared at my cubicle, leaning against the partition. Leaving early? He asked, voice dripping with disapproval. I have plans, I replied simply. I heard you were called to Brooks' office, twice in one day. Something I should know about? I looked up at him. For 8 months, This man had systematically undermined my work, taken credit for my ideas, and just yesterday, humiliated me in front of company leadership. Nothing that concerns you yet, I answered. His eyes narrowed. Everything in this department concerns me, Olivia. I'm your manager. For now, I said quietly. Trevor's face hardened. What's that supposed to mean? I shouldered my bag. Have a good evening, Trevor. By the way, they're predicting rain tomorrow. I hope your BMW doesn't get wet in that exposed parking spot. I walked past him toward the exit, feeling his glare on my back. In the parking garage, I remembered my car wasn't there. I'd parked it on the street as instructed. As I walked down the sidewalk, I spotted Trevor's black BMW gleaming under the premium-covered parking area reserved for directors and above. My phone buzzed with a text from Nayla. Just got off the phone with Marcus. What did you do? I smiled and replied. Made some noise. 8 a.m. meeting tomorrow with executives. You free for dinner to prep? Coming over now. This better be good. I reached my faithful Honda, unlocking it with the key rather than a remote. The worn seat cushion welcomed me like an old friend. This car had seen me through college, my first job, my first heartbreak. It wasn't luxury, but it was paid for, reliable, and mine. As I pulled away from Keystone headquarters, I glanced in my rearview mirror at the towering glass building. For 7 years, I'd given that company my best ideas while accepting being overlooked and undervalued. No more. I drove to the local grocery store, picking up ingredients for dinner with Nayla. Tomorrow would change everything, one way or another. As I navigated through evening traffic, a plan began crystallizing in my mind. I didn't need to buy Keystone outright. I just needed enough leverage to fix what was broken. And I knew exactly where to find it. I arrived home to find Nayla already waiting on my porch, her sleek electric car parked in my driveway. Still wearing her consulting firm's power suit, she paced anxiously, phone pressed to her ear. Look, I don't care what other commitments you have, she was saying. This takes priority. Yes, tomorrow at 9 a.m. Great. She hung up as I approached. Who was that? I asked, unlocking my front door. Financial analyst who owes me a favor. You're going to need hard numbers tomorrow. She followed me inside, eyeing the grocery bags. Please tell me there's wine in there. I pulled out a bottle of Cabernet, already ahead of you. While I prepared a simple pasta dinner, Nayla set up her laptop on my kitchen counter. Marcus called me in a complete panic, she said, uncorking the wine. He thought you were committing securities fraud, using his name. I winced. I may have implied a connection that doesn't technically exist. You're lucky he likes you. Anyone else would have reported you to the SEC. She handed me a glass. Now tell me exactly what happened with Brooks. I recounted both meetings while stirring the sauce, not omitting any details. Nayla listened intently, occasionally typing notes. So they've scheduled this task force meeting for tomorrow, she summarized. That's actually impressive. Brooks must be seriously worried. Or setting a trap, I pointed out. Maybe both. Nayla sipped her wine. What's your actual plan here, Olivia? You can't afford to buy Keystone outright. I drained my glass, feeling the warmth of courage spreading through me. I don't need to buy it. I just need to control what matters most to them right now, which is the quantum frequency modulator patent. Nayla's eyes widened. The one Trevor took from you? The very same. I served our pasta and sat across from her. When Trevor reassigned the project to Julian, he didn't know one critical fact, which is, I never fully documented the stabilization algorithm. The most crucial component only exists in my personal notes. Nayla nearly choked on her wine. You withheld information from company documentation? Not exactly. I documented everything required by contract, but the breakthrough that makes it actually work efficiently? That came to me the weekend before Trevor reassigned the project. I was planning to implement it that Monday. So Julian's been struggling because he's trying to make it work without the key component, a component that could reduce signal degradation by 82% and power consumption by 64%. Nayla whistled. And you kept this to yourself all this time? It's my intellectual property until I implement it in company systems, I replied. I researched the legal boundaries carefully. Nayla shook her head admiringly. That's either brilliant or insane. Maybe both. There's more, I continued, pushing my plate aside and opening my laptop. Remember that startup that got acquired? The one that gave me the windfall? She nodded. What if I told you they were acquired specifically because their technology perfectly complements the quantum modulator? Nayla's eyes narrowed. You invested in a complementary technology. 5 years ago, when I first conceived the QFM project, I saw both potential paths, the one Keystone was pursuing, and an alternate approach. I couldn't convince management to hedge with both, so I personally invested in the alternate method. And now you control both pieces of the puzzle, Nayla whispered. What's the combined potential? I turned my laptop toward her, showing a spreadsheet of market projections. Conservative estimate, $3.2 billion over 5 years. Nayla stared at the numbers. And Keystone's current market cap is $142 million and falling. She leaned back, speechless for a moment. So, tomorrow I explained to Brooks and the board exactly what they've lost by allowing Trevor to sideline their most valuable innovator. I close the laptop, and then I make them an offer. We spent the next 3 hours meticulously preparing my presentation. Nayla called in favors from financial analysts and industry experts, gathering supporting documentation for every claim. By midnight, we had assembled a devastating case against Trevor's management decisions, complete with quantified losses and missed opportunities. Get some sleep, Nayla advised as she packed up. Tomorrow will be intense. I barely slept that night, rehearsing my points and anticipating counter-arguments. At 6 a.m., I showered, then stood before my closet. After a moment's hesitation, I bypassed my usual modest work clothes and pulled out the one designer suit I owned, a gifted sample from Nayla's sister who worked in fashion. If you're going to war, Nayla had always said, at least dress like a general. The charcoal gray suit with subtle blue pinstripes fit perfectly, projecting both authority and understated elegance. I applied minimal makeup and pulled my hair into a sleek, simple style. At 7:15, I drove my trusty Honda to Keystone headquarters. This time, I didn't park on the street. I pulled directly into the spot marked "Reserved for CEO" near the main entrance. A bold move, but today was all about reclaiming space. The security guard approached as I stepped out. Ma'am, you can't park there. I smiled politely. I have an 8 a.m. meeting with Damian Brooks. Please let him know Olivia Preston has arrived early and would appreciate coffee in the boardroom. His confusion was evident, but something in my confident tone made him reach for his phone, rather than argue. Carrying my presentation materials in a leather portfolio, another gift from Nayla, I walked through the lobby toward the executive elevator. Employees already arriving stared at my transformed appearance and unusually confident stride. The boardroom was empty when I arrived, exactly as I'd hoped. I connected my laptop to the presentation system and arranged handouts at each seat. Then I stood at the window, looking out over the city as it awakened, and took a deep, centering breath. At 7:50, Patricia Lynn entered, stopping short when she saw me already set up. You're early, Miss Preston. I prefer being prepared, I replied, not moving from my position of subtle power by the window. She assessed my appearance with a raised eyebrow. Quite a transformation from yesterday. The exterior changes, I said pointedly. The substance remains the same. She almost smiled as she took a seat. At 7:55, Brooks arrived with CFO Martin Goldstein, both looking surprised to find me already positioned. They exchanged glances as they took seats. I see you've made yourself comfortable, Brooks observed. I've made myself ready, I corrected gently. At exactly 8 a.m., I began without waiting for further pleasantries. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. What I'm about to share will fundamentally change how you view Keystone's current situation and future prospects. For the next 20 minutes, I presented my analysis of project performance before and after Trevor's reassignments. The data was devastating. Clear downward trends in productivity, innovation, and predicted market impact. These aren't just numbers, I explained. These represent lost opportunities, delayed launches, and market share surrendered to competitors. Goldstein, the CFO, leaned forward. These projections can't be accurate. You're suggesting the QFM project alone could have generated $340 million in first-year revenue if it had launched on the original schedule. That's correct, I confirmed. And that's a conservative estimate. Impossible, he argued. Our entire annual revenue is $220 million. Because you're thinking incrementally, not transformationally, I replied. The QFM technology doesn't just improve existing products, It creates entirely new market categories. Brooks frowned. Even if that's true, the delays aren't only due to management changes. Julian reports technical barriers that couldn't have been anticipated. This was the opening I'd been waiting for. Those barriers exist because Julian doesn't have the complete solution, I said quietly. The stabilization algorithm that makes the QFM commercially viable never made it into the official documentation. The room went silent. Are you saying you withheld critical information? Lynn asked, her legal mind immediately grasping the implications. I'm saying I made a breakthrough the weekend before the project was reassigned. I never had the opportunity to implement it. I opened a folder and pushed a handwritten page of complex equations across the table. This is the missing piece. Brooks studied the paper. You expect us to believe these scribbles are worth hundreds of millions? I expect you to verify them, I replied evenly. Have your best engineers review them. They'll confirm what I'm saying. Goldstein looked frustrated. What's your point here, Preston? What do you want? I stood, walking to the window again before turning to face them. I want Keystone to succeed. I've invested 7 years of my life here, but success requires change. What kind of change? Brooks asked cautiously. First, Trevor Blackstone needs to be removed from leadership. His management style has cost this company millions and driven away top talent. Lynn raised an eyebrow. You've called this meeting to demand firing your boss because he insulted your car? I've called this meeting because he's destroyed shareholder value through systematically flawed decision-making. I corrected. The car incident was merely the most visible example of a pattern. Even if what you're saying is true, Goldstein interjected, we can't restructure senior management based on one employee's complaints. I smiled then, the first real smile of the meeting. That brings me to my second point. I pressed a button on my laptop, and a new slide appeared showing a corporate structure diagram. What's this? Brooks asked. Phoenix Quantum Technologies, I replied. A new company that owns the complementary technology required to make the QFM commercially viable at scale. The executive team stared at the slide, confusion evident on their faces. 2 days ago, I continued, Phoenix acquired a controlling interest in TrueWave Systems, the startup that owns the parallel processing architecture needed to maximize QFM efficiency. Brooks' face paled. Who owns Phoenix Quantum? Instead of answering directly, I displayed another slide, a news release dated today that hadn't yet been published. The headline read, Phoenix Quantum Technologies offers strategic partnership with Keystone Communications. This release goes public at noon, I explained. It announces a proposed partnership that would give Keystone access to the technology they need to salvage the QFM project in exchange for leadership changes and a new innovation-focused direction. This is blackmail, Goldstein sputtered. This is business, I corrected. Phoenix is offering Keystone a lifeline when your stock is in free fall and your flagship project is failing. And who exactly runs Phoenix? Brooks demanded again. I held his gaze steadily. I do. The stunned silence that followed was broken by the boardroom door opening. Trevor Blackstone walked in, his usual confident smile faltering as he took in the scene. Sorry I'm late, he said, looking between the executives' shocked faces and my position at the head of the table. I wasn't aware this meeting had been called. That's because you weren't invited, I replied calmly. Trevor's face reddened. Excuse me? Any meeting regarding my department involves me by definition. Brooks cleared his throat. Trevor, please take a seat. Miss Preston was just explaining her new company's acquisition strategy. Her what? Trevor looked genuinely confused, his eyes darting from me to the presentation screen. Phoenix Quantum Technologies, I explained, watching comprehension slowly dawn on his face. We've acquired the complementary technology needed to make the QFM commercially viable, technology Keystone desperately needs right now. Trevor paled. That's not possible. You're an engineer, not a business owner, investor, entrepreneur, I supplied. I'm all of those things, Trevor. You just never bothered to look past my old car and quiet demeanor. The next 30 minutes unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. I outlined Phoenix's proposed partnership terms, Trevor's removal, restoration of my original project team, and my appointment to the Executive Leadership Committee with authority over innovation strategy. This is unprecedented, Lynn muttered, reviewing the documents I'd provided. So is the market opportunity, I countered. Combined, our technologies represent a potential $3.2 billion market over 5 years. Separately, neither will achieve full potential. Goldstein looked up from the financial projections. These numbers are incredible. If they're accurate, they are, I assured him. Your analysts can verify independently. Trevor, who had been uncharacteristically silent, suddenly stood. This is ridiculous. She's manipulating you. This mystery company probably doesn't even exist. I slid my phone toward Brooks. Feel free to call Marcus Adeyemi at Windsor Financial. He handled the TrueWave acquisition yesterday. Or perhaps Nayla Chen, who's currently briefing your 3 largest institutional investors on the partnership opportunity. Trevor's face contorted with rage. You've been planning this all along. While pretending to work on company projects, you've been building something valuable. I finished for him. Just not in the way you expected. Brooks raised a hand to silence Trevor. Miss Preston, may we have the room to discuss privately? I nodded, gathering my laptop. The partnership offer expires at 2 p.m. After that, Phoenix will approach Archer Technologies with the same proposal. As I walked toward the door, Trevor blocked my path. You won't get away with this. He hissed quietly enough that others couldn't hear. You're still nothing but a nobody in a pathetic old car. I looked directly into his eyes. That car taught me the most valuable lesson in business, Trevor. Never judge value by appearance. I stepped around him and left the room. Outside in the hallway, I finally allowed my composed facade to crack slightly. My hands trembled as I texted Nayla. Phase 1 complete. They're discussing now. End quote. Her response came immediately. Board members briefed. They're calling Brooks as we speak. I took the elevator down to my regular floor, walking past curious colleagues to my cubicle. For the next 3 hours, I performed my regular work as if nothing extraordinary was happening. The contrast between the morning's power play and my current mundane tasks felt surreal. At 11:58 a.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Patricia Lynn. Boardroom. Now. I took my time walking back to the executive floor, using those minutes to steady my breathing and prepare for either outcome. The boardroom now contained not just Brooks, Lynn, and Goldstein, but the entire board of directors, appearing either in person or via video conference. Trevor sat at the far end, his expression thunderous. Brooks gestured to an empty chair. Miss Preston, please join us. As I seated myself, the board chairman, Elijah Montgomery, addressed me directly. We've reviewed your proposal and verified key aspects of your claims. His stern expression revealed nothing. This board has made a decision regarding Keystone's path forward. I waited, maintaining outward calm, while my heart pounded. Effective immediately, Montgomery continued. We are implementing a comprehensive restructuring of Keystone's innovation divisions. Trevor shifted forward, a premature smile forming. Trevor Blackstone's employment is terminated, effective today. The smile vanished from Trevor's face. What? You can't be serious. Based on verified performance data and the board's loss of confidence, Montgomery interrupted. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. As if summoned by his words, 2 security officers appeared at the doorway. Trevor stood, his face contorted with rage. This is a mistake you'll regret. I'll sue for wrongful termination. Your performance documentation is quite thorough, Lynn replied coolly, but you're welcome to try. As Trevor was escorted out, still shouting threats, Montgomery turned back to me. The board accepts Phoenix Quantum's partnership proposal with one modification. I raised an eyebrow questioningly. Instead of a partnership, we propose a full merger, with you assuming the position of Chief Innovation Officer of the combined entity. It was more than I'd hoped for. Not just influence over projects, but formal executive authority. I accept, I said simply. The announcement went public that afternoon. Keystone stock jumped 17% on the news. By closing bell, financial analysts were speculating about the revolutionary potential of the combined technologies. I left the office at my usual time, walking to my faithful Honda, still parked in the CEO's spot. As I approached, I noticed something on the windshield. A parking violation notice. I smiled as I plucked it off, then spotted Damian Brooks walking toward his luxury SUV nearby. You might want to move your car tomorrow, he called over. That spot will belong to someone else soon. Who? I asked, genuinely curious. You, he replied. Board approved the executive changes an hour ago. I'm transitioning to executive chairman. You're taking over as CEO. I stared at him in shock. That wasn't part of the agreement. The board disagreed. He shrugged. They want the visionary, not the manager. Congratulations, Miss Preston. Or should I say, Madam CEO. As he walked away, I stood frozen beside my old Honda, the parking ticket still in my hand. This morning, I'd been an overlooked engineer parking on the street. Now, I was about to become CEO of a billion-dollar technology company. I drove home in a daze, pulling into my modest driveway for what might be one of the last times. With my new position would come expectations, a different address, different clothes, different car. My phone rang. It was Nayla. Did you hear? She asked excitedly. About the CEO position. Yes, it's unreal. Not just that, she replied. They already cleaned out Trevor's office. Security walked him directly to his precious BMW. Where they found it had been towed. I finished. What? How did you know? I smiled to myself. Because I called parking enforcement this morning. Turns out, his spot was actually designated for emergency vehicles access. He'd been parking illegally for months. Nayla's laughter filled the car. You are absolutely terrifying. You know that? I'm thorough, I corrected her. So, Miss Big Shot CEO, what's your first official act going to be? I looked at my grandfather's old Honda as I stepped out, running my hand along its faded blue paint, creating a new company policy. Employees will be judged by the quality of their work, never by the car they drive. If you enjoyed this story, please take a second to hit that like button. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below. And if you want to hear more stories about people who were underestimated but came out on top, make sure to subscribe. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more with you next time.